Where here's the thing. Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has decided that this famous and one of the greatest cathedrals, pieces of art ever created by human beings and humankind, Hagia Sophia Cathedral, has to be turned and converted into a mosque in Turkey, Constantinople, one of the greatest cities of the ancient world and Europe in particular. I mean, are there not enough mosques in Turkey? There are enough mosques. And I'm going to tell you even more. There are more than enough mosques in Germany, in France, in all the European countries, where all Muslim people have the privilege and the right to worship whoever God they want. And in this particular case, we're talking about Allah, which is great. Ain't no doubt about it. But the thing is, this is a diplomatic assault against the European people. This is a slap in the face. What Erdogan is trying to show that they do not care. That Islam is not just a religion. It's a political statement. It's a claim for conquest. So it's pretty simple. What they do right here, they defy all the Christian values. They want to say they don't care about becoming part of Europe and European Union in general. And if we go back to 2012 when Erdogan talked to Turkish people in Germany, he specifically emphasized this very clear-cut message that democracy, first of all, Turks in Germany, you do not have to assimilate. There is no need to assimilate. Why would you assimilate? It's such a disgraceful culture to assimilate with. And secondly, you need to take this culture, and particularly democracy that it grants you, as a bus that takes you from one destination to the other. And once you arrive at this destination, you can get off the bus. You can defy the rules. There is no need to comply anymore. And what is the destination, if you think? He also specified that. He did not hide it from people. He said the destination is that we multiply to the extent that we have the constitutional, if not constitutional majority, but a constitutional power, a constitutional vote to be able to amend the German constitution to our needs and desires, if it needs to be done so. And what is the problem of Europe right now? The problem of Europe is that it has indulged in the state of cultural and spiritual decadence. The initial inspiration of Europe when accepting all the migrants, which was a virtuous act, was to integrate those migrants and have them assimilated with the German culture and European culture, to accept the values and so on and so forth. But what happened? Most of the overwhelming majority of the migrants do not integrate. They do not assimilate. They don't care about European culture. And how would you? Would you be actually interested in European culture when you see these people themselves are not convinced of the values they are preaching? They're not confident of their faith. They're not confident of themselves. They feel this constant, everlasting guilt of the past. Would you want to be part of them? Of course you would not. You have this faith, Islam, that gives you all the opportunities in the world to connect with God, to connect something bigger than yourself. And then you see these loser boys, Europeans, who are under this constant and grinding guilt of the past that occurred in the past, obviously, undeniably, but they cannot get rid of it. I mean, it's disastrous for these people. And Europeans, instead of considering whenever they talk about their past or they think about their past, instead of highlighting these great events that occurred, the same faith that they used to preach, Christianity, they led them to the point where human rights became of the crucial importance. Now look back at their history as if it was a story of conquest and torture and torment and so on and so forth of other peoples, which is not true. Here's the thing, European people want to be firmer on their culture. They want to have more confidence of themselves, and they want to feel this pride of being who they are, because all these other people, if you think all other peoples across the world have the right to be proud of who they are. The Chinese people can be proud of their history. The Japanese people can be proud of their history. Russian people can be proud of their history. Muslim people can be proud of it. And everybody can be proud of their history besides the European people. I don't know. There's something, because what you do, what their politicians constantly do, is that they disparage, decapitate these people's pride in who they are, who they come from, where they come from actually. Because here's one of the things. If you are a country that gave birth to Shakespeare, to such greatness, you have no right to be ashamed of anything. Of course, you have done things that were terrible and horrendous to other people. You need to take account of those facts, and you need to come to terms with history, with your historical past. But at the same time, you must consider all this greatness that you have brought with you into the future, and the very culture, the very religion that led us to the point where we have become more liberal, we have become more considerate of other people's rights, we have become less intervening. We have started respecting gay rights, homosexual rights, and for goodness sake, women's rights. It is due to this very single religion, to Christianity. I mean, somehow partially, not just partially, but overwhelmingly due to Christianity that preached and still preaches loving thy neighbor, and so on and so forth, and many other things. And we need to understand we should not be ashamed of who we are. It's very important, because when politicians always point fingers, say, you have done this, your grandfather has done this, your great-grandfather who you don't even know has done this or that, that is why you should suffer, and your offspring should suffer, and their offspring should suffer. Now you start feeling unconfident, very unsure about yourself, and very uncertain about the future of your offsprings. Because here's one of the crucial points. It's not just about the monetary advantage that you have in that particular society. It's also about spiritual integrity and spiritual confidence, and that feeling that you contribute to the society. But now what European peoples are actually being told is they have always been these slave owners, colonizers, and now they have to pay for it. And it doesn't matter what the cost is, they have to pay for it. They have to suffer. So suffering is their only salvation, is the single passage, the single road to salvation. And it makes the European people quite agitated. They don't know what to do. They indulge in this era of decadence, and the only consolation that they have at the moment is the culture of consumerism. Have you ever wondered why they want to spend all the time? They want to go shopping, buy this, buy that, because it's the only thing that gives them pleasure besides sex. And sex, probably, this genitals that we have is the compensation for something that we have lost. This is how we're trying to compensate for all these great spiritual endeavors that we could have had, but we decided not to. It's quite simple. What happens if people who practice Islam grow in number, and not just grow in number, but become the majority in European countries? This is one of the scenarios that may actually happen, because the not just overwhelming majority, but the 100% of all European countries are democratic in essence, and the majority rule is the expedient fundamental of their governing system. What may happen, just theoretically, let's hypothesize that if the majority identifies themselves as Muslims, and if they decide that they're going to change the constitution or amend the constitution and install Sharia law, that's what's going to happen, and the rest of the people should abide and comply. This is one of the things that everybody should know. And I'm not saying whether it's bad or good, but the question is whether you want to change or not, whether you want to identify yourself with your grandparents, with your history, and be proud of it, or you want to change. If you want to change, and it's fine for you, then it's okay. We will all change, no problem whatsoever. If this is what the majority decides, and we're a European country and we're a democratic country and we follow the rules and regulations as dictated by the rules of democracy and by the essence of democracy, then this is what we need to do. We need to comply, and that's one of the possible and foreseeable outcomes as what's going to happen if this unregulated, irregulated immigration continues. We're not talking about legal immigrants, because these people flee the regions that are rife with terror and murder and massacre, and not to accept them is a moral sin. And we cannot talk to God in the afterlife and tell him that, oh, okay, we haven't done this because of certain political circumstances. It's impossible. But at the same time, we need to take into consideration is how many people we're going to get, who we're going to get. We need to be able to set some standards. Those people actually need, not just economic migrants who are trying to escape from the poverty that their countries, that their rulers, that their leaders, their political system in general has imposed upon them, but those who are actually fleeing the battleground, who just want to survive. Those are the migrants that we must let in, and there are other people who must be discouraged from coming, because there is only a certain number of people that we can have, regardless of being a migrant, immigrant, or a native, that each country can sustain. There's a huge shortage of houses in Sweden, even for the native speaker. Like 70,000 homes should be built monthly to sustain the Swedish population, which is not being done because the climate in this region is quite severe, and you cannot just have tents and light buildings. You need to have actually very well sustained and very like strongholds to sustain human life. And this is one of the things, and our welfare cannot provide for so many people. And we must also take these things into consideration. At the same time, instead of just saying coming, what if we try to help these people? What if we try to help them to resolve certain problems in their countries so they can become more self-sufficient and do not rely on other countries? So yeah, I think this was a very powerful and mortal blow dealt by the Turkish government, and particularly Erdogan, to European people, and for them it's a wake-up call. I mean, it's one of the greatest cathedrals of European history, and it's a world treasure. It's a world treasure that is now converted into a religious into a religious house where people just go and practice one particular religion, whereas before it was just a museum where everybody could go and just see the history of humankind. So it's important to not to leave Erdogan's audacious strike unanswered.